The best and worst dads of all time. This Father's Day, we bring you 5 men who exemplify some of history's finest parenting along with 5 others you'll be glad you never had to call dad. Charlemagne, king of the Franks and emperor of the Romans in the late 8th and early 9th centuries. Charlemagne had 20 children, some with wives and others with concubines. He insisted that they all receive a thorough education, including the girls. When one of his sons, known as Pepin the Hunchback, was found guilty of participating in a plot to kill Charlemagne, it was expected that he would be executed along with his co-conspirators. Instead, the emperor took pity on Pepin, ordered his sentence commuted and sent him to a monastery. Tsar Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, in 1914, with his wife Alexandra and his children Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia and Alexei. Credit, New York Public Library. The last Russian emperor, Nicholas, had 5 children with his wife, the German-born Alex of Hesse. A loving father, Nicholas was especially concerned with the health of his only son and heir, Alexei, who suffered from hemophilia. Their child's illness led the Tsar and his wife to consult the controversial healer Rasputin, whose influence over the royal family compromised their standing on the eve of the Russian Revolution. Mark Twain with family, circa 1865. Credit, PhotoSearch. Mark Twain and his wife, Olivia, had 3 daughters during their 34-year marriage. Though he doted on all his children, Twain was particularly close with his oldest, Susie, who shared his love of acting and writing. He based at least 2 major characters in his novels on her. When she died of meningitis as a young woman in 1896, Twain fell into a deep depression. Later, he included passages written by Susie about her father in his autobiography. Cicero, a prominent ancient Roman statesman and philosopher, Cicero adored his daughter Tullia and was devastated when she died of complications from childbirth in 45 BC. Inconsolable despite his friends' many letters of condolence, some of which are still in existence, Cicero isolated himself for several weeks at the home of his friend Atticus, where he read texts by Greek philosophers about how to overcome grief. He later divorced his second wife, Publilia, supposedly because she had not been sufficiently saddened by her stepdaughter's death. Charles Darwin, the father of modern evolutionary science, was also a devoted dad to 10 children, of whom 2 died in infancy. He played a central role in raising and educating his brood at a time when child-rearing was seen as woman's work. The death in 1851 of 10-year-old Annie was a crushing blow for Darwin and his wife, Emma, and some have speculated that it caused him to lose his religious faith. Peter the Great, the ambitious and erratic Peter, who ruled Russia from 1682 to 1725, fathered 14 children, many of whom died young, with his 2 wives. Not known for his warm parenting style, he famously contributed to the death of his firstborn son, Alexei, who had been convicted of conspiring to kill his father, despite a lack of concrete evidence. Before his planned execution, Alexei died in his prison cell of wounds sustained during a torture session. Constantine the Great, the Roman Emperor Constantine, who ruled from 306 AD until his death in 337, fathered 6 children with his 2 wives. He had a close working relationship with his eldest son, Crispus, who oversaw many of his father's military campaigns. For reasons that remain unclear, Constantine ordered his son's execution in 326. Crispus' name was erased from official records and monuments dedicated to him were destroyed. Thomas Boleyn, born into a noble English family around 1477, Thomas Boleyn spent his career currying favor with King Henry VIII, earning a succession of prestigious appointments. He may have had a hand in the romantic involvement of both his daughters with Henry, who first had an affair with Mary Boleyn and later pursued her older sister, Anne. As Henry's obsession with Anne grew, so did Thomas' standing in court, and some have speculated that he pressured his daughter to insist on wedding the king, who was already married at the time. 3 years after the controversial marriage, Anne, having failed to produce a male heir, fell out of favor and was beheaded for high treason. Her brother George suffered the same fate. Thomas, meanwhile, had done nothing to protect his 2 children despite his influence and the fact that they were almost certainly innocent. Ivan the Terrible. Oh, Ivan the Terrible killing his son by Ilyaripin. Ivan the Terrible killing his son by Ilyaripin, a successful czar who expanded the borders of his realm but was probably plagued by mental illness. Ivan ruled Russia from 1533 until his death in 1584. It is likely that his 9 children suffered years of abuse at his hands. In 1581 he beat his pregnant daughter-in-law as punishment for wearing revealing clothing, causing her to miscarry. Her husband, also named Ivan, angrily confronted his father, who had banished his son's first 2 wives to convents after pronouncing them infertile. Incensed, the Tsar struck his heir on the head with his scepter. The younger Ivan died a few days later as his remorseful father prayed by his bedside for a miracle. Herod the Great Credit, Hulton Archive, king of Judea from 37 to 4 BC. Herod is remembered as an ambitious but cruel and paranoid ruler who infamously ordered the executions of several members of his own family. These included his second wife, his mother-in-law, his brother-in-law and 3 of his sons.